The Portland Trailblazers have been the center of attention this offseason in the NBA. Most of you know that is because of Damian Lillard's trade request, and I'd even go as far to say trade demand, especially to a team down in South Florida named the Miami Heat. That is, of course, rumored to be Damian Lillard's preferred destination. I'm sure he's confirmed it on Twitter or Instagram. He's been pretty active. His agent's been very active, and this entire situation in Portland is kind of a mess. But the NBA moves quickly, and I think the Portland Trailblazers hold the greatest possible Uno reverse card ever in NBA history, potentially. So what is that Uno reverse card? And yes, you guys saw it in the thumbnail. You're seeing it on the screen now, and that is a big-time play for a Joel Embiid level player. Now, Joel Embiid is, of course, the star to watch right now, given his recent play. He's the MVP of the NBA, whether you agree with it or not. He won the award, and there's a lot of drama right now in Philadelphia as well. Of course, his point guard there in Philly, James Harden, wants to find a way to the Los Angeles Clippers. Does not look like that's going to happen this offseason, but Harden, now playing on that option that he opted into, is on the final year of his deal. So people are wondering, is the clock ticking for the process in Philadelphia, and will Joel Embiid potentially request a trade? And we're going to talk about how the Portland Trailblazers, if they go about this in the right way, if they're patient with Damian Lillard, and this trade discussion, the trade negotiations between Miami and Portland and some of the other NBA teams out there, we're going to look at how there's a bunch of different options that Portland could potentially utilize at some point to not only keep Dame happy, but maybe even win him back and have him buy back into the franchise, which is a little bit of an underexplored topic right now, I think, in the entire Dame discussion. So let's go ahead and jump into it now with the question, is it Dame time or drama time? And there's been a lot of drama, of course, speculation about where Damian Lillard will play next season. Miami is the team that most often comes up, but there's also Brooklyn. Utah's been rumored, of course, Philadelphia, and a potential 3-team trade that I floated months ago, even before all of this kind of started to come out. I talked about how the Clippers would be a landing spot for Harden, given their need for kind of a true point guard who can facilitate an offense. And honestly, when you look at the situation right now, there's been a lot more drama time than Dame time recently in Portland, and I'm not talking about just this offseason, I'm talking about the last 2-3 years. There's been a lot of moving pieces, there's been front office changes. They've done a good job in the draft. I think that's really the one thing that they can hang their hat on, but ultimately those decisions to use those picks numbers 7 and 3 over the last 2 years, has led Dame to request a trade, which means more drama than Dame time in Portland, which obviously is a bummer. But I think patience is pivotal. And when we look at Damian Lillard's contract extension, he extended for 2 years at $122 million, which ties him to the organization through 2027, which is a very, very long time. The Portland Trailblazers, in my opinion, hold the leverage. And if they go about this in the correct way of, we're going to try and squeeze every single penny we can out of a Damian Lillard trade, which is what they should do as an organization, the front office, that is their job right now, is to execute this trade to an expert level. And if they can't get that done, they need to be patient and wait for the market to either shift or change. Maybe Damian Lillard's mind will change. There's a lot of different things that can play into this. Now, when you look at Scoot Henderson, he only played one Summer League game, but he looked really, really good in that Summer League game. Now, I know for a guy like me who spends so much time watching these draft prospects, it doesn't really change my perspective of a player, but I know for kind of the casual fan or fans who are maybe less into college basketball or, say, the G League Ignite program in this case, that was a really good positive sign for Blazers fans, and I think that's a really important place to start our discussion on patience. I think Blazers fans totally understand the situation right now. Dame wants out. The organization doesn't want to trade him, especially for lesser value. So I think the fans will buy into, hey, we're going to watch Scoot Henderson, we're going to watch Shaedon Sharpe, we're going to watch a good, fun, young team. Yeah, sure, they're not going to win a lot, but there's talent here, and they want to see kind of the growth of those young guys over time. You've got a second-year player in Sharpe who is electrifying. You've got now a rookie in Scoot Henderson who I think could really take over the league. And there's a lot of different things that you could look to do potentially with those guys moving forward, whether that's building your roster around them or using them as massive trade pieces to get something done. And really, you see on the graphic too, Tyler Hero and Nikola Jovic, no disrespect to those guys, Both of them are solid players in their own right. Tyler Hero, of course, a lot more proven in the NBA, I think, is a good NBA player. He just doesn't fit what Portland needs right now. And if a third team's not willing to give up massive amounts of assets to get something done here, a trade for Portland just does not and has not made any sense for a trade with the Miami Heat. And that's the most important part here. I know Miami Heat fans are going to be mad in the comments about this, but if you were running the Portland Trailblazers, would you accept this type of trade where you get Tyler Hero, who doesn't really fit with your young core, you get Nikola Jovic, who probably doesn't move the needle much anyway? This Blazers team is probably going to lose with or without Dame, so you can be patient and say, well, it doesn't really matter if we trade him right now, especially if we're only getting far out future picks. Be patient. Play the waiting game a little bit, because I do think there are some options here that the Portland Trailblazers can utilize to their advantage. What is the proposed option that I have for the Portland Trailblazers? It really comes down to being willing to let Damian Lillard sit out for an entire season if he chooses to do so. If he decides not to play for you, well, guess what? You're in line to be picking toward the top of the draft again, and we could be in a different situation a year from now where maybe the trade market looks different. There's a lot more players available to trade for. Could you go out and package Jeremy Grant's $32 million a year contract and potentially a top 5 pick to go get something next year? That's a completely different conversation. People haven't really thought about that much, where if Dame sits and rests for a year, first of all, he'll be healthy going into the following season, which he hasn't been healthy the last couple of years, plus they've tanked at the end of the season because the team's just not been that good. Secondly, if you let him sit for a year, Scoot and Shaedon are both going to develop as players. They're going to have a lot of time on the court. They're going to learn. They're going to make mistakes, but they're going to learn from those mistakes. And I think that's a really beneficial piece of this as well, is if you just don't rush into a Damian Lillard trade, guess what? You're giving your young guys playtime that you want to give them anyway. This works for you if Damian Lillard does or does not play for the organization. And in fact, it might be cleaner if he doesn't play for the organization. But then some people might say, whoa, what worst case, maybe you don't get something for him. Maybe, but I don't really believe that to be true. At the trade deadline or next offseason, I think that there's going to be, again, a good amount of suitors for Damian Lillard, and if he sees that the Portland Trailblazers are going to play hardball with him, he will give them a list of more than one team, because he's not just going to sell out the rest of his contract. That's not going to happen. I can guarantee you that 100%, promise that he will not do that. So if he understands that, hey, look, the Blazers' position on this is very firm, I'm the one who has to loosen up, and I think he ultimately would at some point. Yes, you're risking that relationship. You're kind of risking a bad outlook to other stars, but it's one here where the Blazers are at such a pivotal spot in their organization that I think that they do have to toe a pretty strong line here when it comes to these trade discussions, trade negotiations, and ultimately their willingness to potentially let Damian Lillard not get traded this offseason or this season if there is no offer that is suitable for them to kind of jumpstart their rebuild around Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe. Could throw Anthony Simons in there as well. This team has a lot of young talent, and I think that, again, patience is really the key here for this Blazers team and their front office right now. So what picks do they have in the future while we're talking about patience? Well, because of the Larry Nance trade, I don't know if anyone was calling it that at the time, they do owe the Chicago Bulls a top 14 protected pick in 2024. Now, my guess is that will not convey the Blazers will likely have a top 5 pick in this year's draft. But the big issue here is that has backups all the way through 2028, which is horrendous. And because of that, they don't really have a lot of trade flexibility currently. Now, there is a possibility that they could go and talk with Chicago and say, look, what do we have to give you to kind of loosen up those protections and maybe change the terms of this deal? Now, it's not guaranteed that you can get that done, but sometimes there's maneuverability there. Also, there's just the possibility of, hey, well, we can't really line ourselves up for a big trade, but we do have young players that could set us up for a big trade as well. So the picks, a little complicated right now. They don't have a lot of future picks that they can play with. They do have 2029 and 2030 and 2031. So they've got some flexibility here, but not a ton. So that's something important to note. But again, here's the big Uno reverse card, and it's making a big play for Joel Embiid or another star that becomes available. like him in the future. And you might say, well, how do they get a potential run at Joel Embiid? Listen, Scoot Henderson is going to get you into conversations for players like this. Shaedon Sharpe can already start opening doors for conversations for a trade for Joel Embiid. Remember, everyone's mad at the Blazers for not trading for Pascal Siakam. If within 12 months they turn around and you find Joel Embiid on the roster with Damian Lillard, this is that huge Uno reverse card, and from a X's and O standpoint, it does make a really good deal of sense to have Damian Lillard playing alongside Joel Embiid. Of course, Embiid found so much success playing around James Harden, who's a fantastic short roll passer, really great facilitator, and because of that, Joel Embiid found a ton of success scoring from the middle of the floor and finding a lot of easier touches than he typically was getting around Ben Simmons and some of the other Sixers rosters he had been playing with the last 16 months with James Harden. I know there's been some drama there as well, but Joel Embiid's played his best basketball, and some of that is from James Harden. Some of that's from his own personal development. He's been a really great player for a long time. He's taken strides forward in the last couple of years as well, but I do think James Harden elevated him, and I think Damian Lillard, with his range specifically, it would put a really tough bind on defenses because you have this really unique, talented big man here in Joel Embiid who can kill you from the nail. He can kill you on long rolls. He definitely kills you on short rolls. He's a really good screen setter, I think an underrated element to his game. And just all in all, offensively, he's a juggernaut. You give him the ball at the mid post, you give him the ball in the low post, he's going to score. He can step out behind the three-point line, knock it down. I think he's a growing passer as well, which gets under-discussed. But then you also pair that with a guy like Damian Lillard, who is very different from James Harden. Now, Harden's better at some things. I think Harden's a better passer in terms of his actual talent to fit the ball in tight windows. But Damian Lillard, there's less tight windows for him because he's stretching the defense out to 35-plus feet at times. The kind of stress and pressure he puts on a point of attack defender is unique and remarkable. Honestly, the only guy who does anything similar in the league is Steph Curry, and Damian Lillard does it at a higher clip from an efficiency standpoint. You also look at his ability to get downhill. I think he's actually a pretty underrated finisher for a guy who is predominantly a below-the-rim finisher. He's still pretty good in that regard. And just quite frankly, he's one of the better scorers in the league. You're looking at two guys here in Embiid and Damian Lillard who are both 30-plus point per game scorers. They could carry a massive bulk load for Portland offensively, but I think the most important thing to talk about, Damian Lillard's never been on a good defensive team. Now, he's part of the reason for that, but another big reason is he spent most of his career with a big man like Jusuf Nurkic, who, no offense to Nurkic, he's been a good center in the league for a good amount of time. I still think he's a serviceable center, but there's a different ballpark that we're talking about here with Joel Embiid. He's one of the better rim protectors. He's one of the better intimidators around the rim, even to the point where sometimes teams and players individually don't want to shoot the ball with him as the closest defender around the rack. And I think that is a very important thing to note. It would give Chauncey Billups a huge advantage from what he currently has in terms of how he's going to protect the paint and build a good organized team defense. And I think these two players together could really shake up the NBA. Now, Joel Embiid is not going to get traded today. He's not going to get traded this season. So be patient on this. This is why, again, patience is key for Portland. There's no reason to rush into a trade for Tyler Hero and Nikola Jovic. My guess is that package will be on the table a year from now. It's not like the Heat are going to all of a sudden have all these extra picks. It's not like the Heat all of a sudden are going to say, no, we don't want Damian Lillard. Listen, the options are going to be there. Who knows? Maybe a team gets desperate within a year and says, Damian Lillard could be the kind of crazy tipping point. Maybe it's the Boston Celtics and you could work out a trade around Jaylen Brown and some picks. There's a lot of different options here. And for Portland, being patient is the best thing you can do because it gives you time to see Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe play together. Kind of gives you an idea of how do we build our roster. It gives you time for other roster moves as well. Maybe an Anthony Simons trade, maybe a Jusuf Nurkic trade. We'll get to see what Chris Murray looks like in the NBA. Portland, please be patient. Do not rush into a Damian Lillard trade. And who knows, at the very end of the day, what I'm kind of talking about here is a potential salvation of the relationship where, yes, you didn't make the big trade. You didn't get a Pascal Siakam this offseason. You didn't do something huge to tell Damian Lillard, we're building around you right now. But within a year, Shaedon Sharpe's going to be entering year 3. Scoot Henderson's going to be coming off of a great rookie season. They're going to have trade chips if they figure out a way to work with Chicago. Maybe they have a massive pick offer for Joel Embiid. They could find themselves in a really, really great situation to make some type of bigger trade to tell Damian Lillard, look, we couldn't get it done a year ago, but we still have you on roster. We're still committed to building around you, which is what Joe Cronin has predominantly said this offseason. And maybe they find themselves in a position with the ever-changing trade market and trade landscape. Maybe the Portland Trailblazers do become a destination for a big-time trade at some point to convince Damian Lillard to spend the rest of his career playing for the Portland Trailblazers. I think that's a really key thing to watch, and I'm very excited to see how the next 12 to 16 months play out here in Portland. I think that they're really the team to watch when it comes to movement and roster construction and kind of everything in between. They've got fun young guys to watch, but they've also got this Dame drama that is seemingly never ending at this point, but at some point it will, and it might be for the betterment of the relationship between the Blazers and Damian Lillard. Really hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel as well. It would go a long way in helping support what we do here at Utility Sports. I have a lot of fun making these videos. And we have other videos up on the channel as well. We've been doing some season previews. Most recently, we did an Indiana Pacers season preview and a Houston Rockets season preview. Really want to check those out. A lot of work goes into those as well as this video. So again, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.